walking in the shadows of the trees.
All right, we are done here in Pasadena, about to head down to LA to get our buns finally. So we're gonna go grab lunch in Little Tokyo and then head down to Long Beach. Hopefully check in, recharge our batteries, and then get ready for dinner tonight. And also, I believe we're doing the Queen Mary tonight. So I will get all of that footage. So yeah, that is the plan for today. There it is. That's the reason we're here. Oh, the yummy goodness. It's so hard to explain. This is spicy, but I don't think that's too spicy.
If it's not spicy, it's not spicy.
Restock. Alright, here in Long Beach, waiting for our vehicle so we can go to the Queen Mary.
Die aboard the ship. We can't tie her to one of the reported deaths. I will tell you, there are 58 recorded deaths aboard the Queen Mary. I will also tell you, there are way more than 58 people who died aboard the ship. Those 58 recorded deaths came from the ship's log when she was operating as an ocean liner, taking paying passengers across the Atlantic. All of those 72 wartime voyages where she transported 5, 10, 12. According to paranormal psychologists and investigators, there are two distinct types of hauntings that you might experience. The first is what most of us think of when we think of a ghostly encounter.
Queen Mary, haunted tours. Let's go find the ghosts.
An intelligent haunting. Now we are on the A deck. This is the A deck of the hotel lobby. It was originally the first class entrance. So if you were a first class passenger, you would embark through those doors over there, come up to the purser's desk to receive your cabin assignments. This is the same way hotel guests come in and check in for the hotel receiving their room assignments. Now what I want to talk about here is this piano. This piano is original to the ship. It is not original to this location. It actually came from the third class main lounge where we all started our tour. Now, over the years, this has been played by a number of people. Most notably, it has been played by Liberace. Anyone know who Liberace is? You heard of him? Okay. He did travel aboard the ship as a first-class passenger, and he played this piano when he decided to give a free concert, not to the first class, not to the second class, but to the third-class passengers. He said something to the effect of, you know what? First-class passengers, they can afford to come and see me play anytime they want.
That scared me.
We are at the foot of what we call the Deadly Staircase. This is actually the main stairwell for third-class passengers. It would be their equivalent to a grand staircase. Now, most people think of grand staircases like ships like Titanic. The term grand staircase is actually a bit of a misnomer. Grand staircase does not mean the staircase was built to be elaborate and fancy. It actually means grand because one stairwell descends through all the decks they had access to. So this stairwell is actually 5 levels, and it was the third-class main stairwell. So this ship did have the 3 classes, remember I told you about. They weren't separated by deck. It was actually sections of the ship based on the smoothness of the ride, because this ship would rock and roll a lot, not only on average 20 degrees from port to starboard in rough seas, but also forward to back in really rough conditions. And so first class was situated in the middle of the ship, where it was the smoothest ride. So 75%, the whole middle of the ship was all first class accommodations. Second class was all the way aft. So they had a pretty smooth ride even when the seas were rough, but they had to deal with the noise and the constant vibrations of the turbine engines in the engine rooms down below decks. Third class was all the way up front, where they had the roughest ride, not only the rocking from side to side, but the bow pitching forward, scooping up waves and throwing them back against the ship. These stairs would actually have to be closed off in rough seas because they were so treacherous. They got the name the Deadly Staircase because of this very thing. So there are actually 2 big design flaws to the stairs. You can see, looking at them, they're very steep. They're 45 degrees on angle, and they're also directionally facing the bow. So instead of being perpendicular, they go with the bow. So if the bow goes forward, so do the stairs. It can go from 45 degrees down to 0, up to 90, and anywhere in between when the sea is really rocking back and forth. The stairs would literally fall out from under people's feet, come up to meet them in the face. We know of at least 2 deaths that occurred here on the Deadly Staircase. That's where it got its nickname, even when it was still sailing out at sea. One of these deaths occurred in 1954, right below our feet, down on B deck at the landing of the stairwell. A third-class passenger by the name of George Sidney Wayman was found collapsed. And ever since then, there's been an apparition that we believe is George Sidney Wayman. We simply call him the Man in Black, because he's always seen wearing a black 3-piece suit. Now, the Man in Black descends up and down that stairwell from B deck to A deck, 1 level down below us. And he is not seen very often, I will say that. Up until 2012, we didn't even talk about the Man in Black on tours because people rarely ever saw him. And a lot of tour guides didn't even know about him. In fact, in 2012, we decided to add him into the tours because a tour guide did see him when he was walking his tour route before the first tour of the day. He knew he saw a ghost, he didn't know what he had seen, so he went to tell his manager that he had seen a man walking up the staircase. The manager said, "Well, you've likely just seen the Man in Black. He doesn't show himself to very many people. You're pretty lucky." That tour guide didn't feel quite so lucky, but ever since then, we've started talking about him in hopes that someone might see him. Now, we do offer a 2-hour late night tour. It's always sold out, I will tell you that, so I know there's no openings tonight, but I lead that tour, and we go all throughout the ship. And that tour is very popular with big-time paranormal investigators, psychics, mediums. They love to go on that tour because we go through a lot of the ship. And usually I get people that, before the tour starts, they'll tell me, "Hey, I'm a psychic, I'm a medium, I can see things." And usually I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I'm sure you can." But I had this girl about 2 weeks ago. She was about 17 or so, and she told me that she was a medium and she could see things, and I believed her. And we get down to the B deck landing, and I had not said a word about, I hadn't even called these the Deadly Stairs yet, or mentioned George Sidney Wayman. And she asked me, "Is there a man that's seen wandering on the stairs here?" And I said, "Yeah." She's like, he's a dark man in maybe a black suit?" I said, "Yeah, why?" And she said, "Well, I saw him walking up the stairs and he got to the top and he just disappeared." So that was 2 weeks ago, so maybe he's still seen today. Now, the last thing I want to talk about before we leave this area is a room, and of all rooms to talk about, it is actually this room right behind you, sir, the women's restroom, right here on the A-deck landing for the 3rd-class main stairwell. Now, inside there, we have had a number of reports, most notably from our female housekeepers, of an apparition of a man that's seen in that room a lot. He's always seen wearing an officer's uniform, looking very much like myself, only not nearly as handsome, or so I'm told. But we do believe that is the ship's senior second officer, William Stark, who I told you about a little bit earlier on M deck, who lost his life in 1949 due to a very unfortunate accident aboard the ship. So, September 18th, 1949, Senior Second Officer William Stark, he's invited by the staff captain to join him and a few other officers for a pre-dinner drink in the staff captain's quarters. He says, "Sure, I'd love to." So after his watch ends, he's the first to arrive in the staff captain's quarters, and he decides, you know what, I'm gonna get my pregame on a little bit early. I respect that. So he tells the cabin steward to go and fetch him a bottle of gin. Now these cabin stewards are generally very young guys, usually around 11 or 12 years old. That'll be important here in just a second. So this cabin steward goes off in search of a bottle of gin. Now he finds a bottle in a footlocker, of all places, not a liquor cabinet, but a footlocker, and it has a handwritten label that says gin, in quotes. He presents that bottle to Stark, and Stark, having no reason to believe otherwise, pours a very healthy glass, adds a lime twist, and shoots it back. Now, we know, based on the report, Stark was suffering from a severe cold at the time, so he could not smell anything. But he knew as soon as he swallowed the contents of that glass that it was not gin that came out of that bottle. Now, around that time, the other officers did arrive on the scene. They noticed a strange expression on Stark's face, so they asked him, "Stark, what's the matter?" And he tried to joke about it. He said, "Well, gentlemen, I do believe I've just poisoned myself." But he didn't realize just how accurate those words were, because it wasn't gin that was in that bottle. It was actually carbon tetrachloride, which is an industrial cleaning agent they would use to dry clean their uniforms. Now, this ship, even back then, had a full functioning hospital. It could do everything from delivering babies to performing open surgeries. So why Stark thought, "Nah, I don't need to go to the doctor after drinking this much poison," is beyond me. But he went through the rest of the night trying to just put the matter behind him like nothing had happened. He wakes up the next morning, however, feeling violently ill. Now he's got no choice. He's taken to the ship's hospital, but he continues to decline. The following day, when the ship docks in Southampton, he's transferred to a hospital on land, but he would never leave that hospital alive. Now, that was 1949. From that time until this very day, there have been numerous reports of an officer seen wandering around the officers' quarters overhead, the decks outside, this restroom, and now, perhaps, our employee locker room, that is believed to be Senior Second Officer William Stark, still wandering around, perhaps just looking for the right bottle. Now, two things to note about that. I mentioned the cabin steward was probably a young boy. We actually don't know based on the report. I think they probably tried to insulate this person from being victimized because of the presenting the bottle. But it would make sense to me that it was probably a young guy, because a 12-year-old would not have a key to a liquor cabinet, which is why he found this bottle in a foot locker, because he actually could access that. Also, they do believe that the reason that it said gin in quotes, it was probably just some joke about what was actually in the bottle, but ultimately Stark would be the one to pay the price for that joke. All right, well, we're going to make our way to the fire station so we can all learn how to appropriately use the fire extinguisher. Follow me this way. All right. You sure can? We're going to be up here in the fire station, not far away, don't worry. You can.
I was going to follow them in, like, wait, that's the answer.
Oh, my gosh.
It's a swimming pool, so I hope you all brought your swimsuits. No skinny dipping on my tour. It is a family tour. First class had their own pool, second class had their own pool. Third class did not have their own pool, which at the beginning of the ship's career, that was no big deal because third class passengers didn't really expect things like a pool. However, after World War II, by a decade into her service, more and more people were traveling, even in third class, and they began to see things on other ships like a pool, so it was expected that the Queen Mary should offer a pool to them as well. Now, since they couldn't actually add a pool, there was nowhere to do it for the third-class passengers, it was decided that they could use this pool for a finite period of time each and every day. Since they were in close proximity to first class, it made sense for them to use this pool. Now, the way that would work, as luck would have it, first-class passengers were at high tea every day from 2 to 4 anyway, so they weren't using this room for 2 hours. So it was decided from 2 to 3 that the third-class passengers could swim in this pool. Now, you might be asking yourself, if high tea was for 2 hours, why did they only get 1 hour to use the pool? I'm glad you asked that, because at 3 o'clock, they would be ushered out of the pool so the pool could be completely drained, scrubbed clean, and refilled with brand new water before the first class passengers got back in there. Oh, true story, I'm not making that up. That was part of the agreement that allowed third class passengers to use this pool. Now, this pool is very famous on these paranormal tours because many believe this is the most haunted room on the entire ship. Now, according to paranormal psychologists and investigators, they believe the reason for that is this room is actually a vortex or a whirlpool of energy that is opened up, which allows spiritual energy to transfer from one realm into this realm. And the reason they believe it exists here in the pool, specifically in the changing stalls, which are right below you guys over here, because the pool itself is 2 decks. The ceilings of the pool and the changing stalls are made of quartzite. We are surrounded by water. Water and quartzite are both known conduits for spiritual energy. Now, I have spoken with some of the mediums who have been in this pool and held overnight sessions, seances, whatever you want to call it. Some of them have told me there is somewhere in the realm of 200,000 ghosts that haunt the ship. Many of them having passed through this vortex, and they have no ties to the Queen Mary whatsoever, but they've chosen to remain here. I guess because it's a great way to spend the afterlife, I don't know. The pool is also very famous because it seems to be home to the most famous spirit aboard the entire ship. If you guys know anything about the ghost of the Queen Mary, you've probably heard of this spirit of a little girl that goes by the name of Jackie. She's always described as being about 5 to 7 years old, and she is our most frequently seen, felt, and heard spirit aboard the entire ship. What do I mean by that? Well, she's a fun-loving spirit, and she likes to make a game out of it anytime that she is seen. So usually, she will be seen peeking over the railings, looking around columns. Up until 2017, you could actually go into the pool on certain tours, and people would say they saw a child's wet footprints appearing around the deck like she's just gotten out of the pool and she's walking around. Now that you can't go in here anymore, they say a child's handprints will appear on the other side of the glass like she's standing inside and staring out at you. People also say, they say a child's cold, icy hand comes up and grabs onto theirs, or they feel her tugging at their clothing. And she is heard a lot, probably even more than seen, she is heard, both with people's ears and captured on recordings in the form of EVP, or electronic voice phenomena. Most oftentimes, I heard something behind me, that's actually how we know her name is Jackie, because she has told us time and again that that is what her name is. And usually, she's not heard speaking, but singing in the pool. They think it's because she likes the sound of her voice with the acoustics of the room, and so usually she will be heard singing either Mary Had a Little Lamb or Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. They seem to be her favorites. And whenever different people go into the pool and they want to try and capture her on EVP, they will use one of these songs to encourage her to sing with them, leaving out key words of these songs and wait for her to fill in the blanks with the appropriate word, which more times than not she often does. People like Zach Bagans with the Ghost Adventures and some of the big YouTubers with a lot of followers have gone in here, and that's what they do here in the pool. Now, aside from all that, she is also believed to be the most powerful spirit aboard the entire ship. Reason for that? Out of all the spirits we talk about here on the ship, she's the only one that we can say has manifested, not only here aboard the ship, but off the ship as well. If you all saw that big dome out there, which if you didn't, I don't know how you missed it, but it was built to house the Spruce Goose, which was Howard Hughes' big prototype plane from the 1930s. If you watch the movie The Aviator with Leonardo DiCaprio, that was about Howard Hughes in that plane. They filmed a lot of it here on the ship. And up until 1993, it was part of the same attraction. So one ticket would get you into both properties, and our security detail would do a sweep of both properties every single night. So at midnight, they would do a sweep of the Queen Mary, then they would go over to the dome and do a sweep of the Spruce Goose. In the early 90s, the security guard has just left the Queen Mary. Around midnight, he's doing a sweep of the Spruce Goose, and he sees a little girl, matching Jackie's description, walking along the wings of the Spruce Goose. Now he thinks that could be Jackie, but he's not sure. So he calls out to her by name and tells her that she has to come down. He said that she jumped off the wing and disappeared right before she hit the floor. That's when he knew it was indeed Jackie that he had seen. And she's been seen not just once, not just twice, but a number of times over there, as well as here aboard the ship. Now, the Spruce Goose left in 1993. It went off to McMinnville, Oregon, to an aviation museum, which you can still go see it. Now, we don't even use the dome. It's used by Carnival as a port of entry for their passengers embarking on the Carnival ships when they dock next to us. And they know about Jackie, so they will call over here from time to time to tell our security people, hey, we saw Jackie tonight walking the catwalks overhead. So she's still seen in both properties to this very day, though here on the ship much more often. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jay.
It almost looks like there's still water.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa. Look at the lights flickering.
Oh, well, I would say you could probably...
Right here, you can see the
what
light.
you would do
You can
is,
feel the boat.
after here, I would go up to the tour center where you check it.
At least I
And
can.
they will have the availability.
We're too snazzy, Queen Mary. It's a pretty awesome ship. Lots of history. Did the tour. If you're here, go see the tour. See Tim. He did an awesome job. Right now we are going to go eat, go meet my dad, and have some dinner.
I want to stay 340.